so you've written two books, right? How long ago did you write the first book, the 9 minutes?
I'm in some Monday. That was 2012. What's that, 13 years ago?
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, it's done well. It still sells. It's very simple leadership framework. It's prescriptive.
Okay.
This newest book, though, is more really me on the soul level. It's the more spiritual book.
Yeah, because that's
I,
what I was going to ask. What's the like? Because it's a catalyst, but obviously the difference between that other book was it more regimented aspects of life, and this other one was more of letting go and seeing what happens.
yeah, I mean, I had a difficulty figuring out like how am I gonna reconcile both of these? You know, even on the like we gotta rebrand the website because it just doesn't. I just can't fit this in. It's like
Yeah.
you know, taking a self-help book into the I don't know leadership section. Even though yes, there's overlap, but still, it's definitely different. So, but it's more you know to your point, Frank. It's more about the journey. Actually, I don't know which one of you phrase Frank and Mike. I think Frank, you're on my
Yeah,
yeah.
Frank.
So I
Yeah.
I'm
figured.
Mike.
Yeah.
Um, what you said, Frank, like it's the part of the journey, right? This is my journey. I I'm probably late to this point. I probably could have been here quicker and faster, but you know,
You're
fears
you're
held that back.
perfectly on time, my friend.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll tell my bank that. Perfectly on time.
Yeah.
So tell
Yeah.
us, tell
Whenever
us.
you guys want to go, unless we're going already, but just tell me
Yeah,
and
yeah, we
Oh
we
yeah, we
yeah,
already
we're
dive in. We'll,
yeah,
we'll cut kind of just from the start. That's usually what we like to do.
yeah,
So we like to treat it just like a natural conversation.
yeah.
You know, us
great.
having coffee, us relaxing. That's usually what brings about the best stuff when we're talking. I mean, so you have this leadership style book, and then you have this more
Finding yourself book.
finding yourself spiritual aspect. You know, with the second book. Is that based on kind of your path and how you came to find yourself? Did you begin to find this, hey, I can do this leadership mentality, and that's what got you on the path, or were you more on a spiritual path and that led you to leadership? Which kind of came first for you, James?
I think I was on a spiritual path, and that led me to leadership, which then led me back to a spiritual path. What I mean is, I mean, I grew up on a small cattle ranch in the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. I was this shy, introverted redhead that, you know, had all these insecurities. But one thing I had was big dreams, and I was just convinced I will make it, I will get rich, I will be very successful. And I went to university. I wanted to become a film director, and that was my passion to go tell stories through film. But while I was in college, I ran into this Christian church that was filled with just a lot of students. I started attending. It was fun. I really enjoyed my time there. And the guy who was leading the church, he was this young guy and his wife. They're just this really cool couple. And I remember looking at them thinking, but they're not going to make any money doing this. And that was what was important to me was making a lot of money. But over time, as I saw their lives, I thought, but you know what? They're really happy. Like these guys are really enjoying their lives. And that began to sort of wear down this mentality I had, like I need to be successful and be really rich. Well, as time went on in college, I was attending and they actually gave me a summer job, you know, setting up volleyball nets and things like that. But I really enjoyed it. And so here I was, I went from working at the golf course every summer to all of a sudden I'm working for this church as an intern, but I'm getting to help people. And it felt really good. Like I really liked that. And then when I graduated from college, they were like, hey, why don't you come and work for us and be like a young minister in training? And I said, yes. And that was not even on my top 500 things to do in my life
Yeah.
list, but I enjoyed helping people. And so as I got into ministry and went through all that training and was really in the trenches, I enjoyed helping people. But over the years, that began to change, mostly because the culture of the organization changed. But I started to feel this sense of unhappiness there. And part of it came back to I'm not going to make much money here. And now I have kids. And can I do something on the side? And so I began thinking, what's a business I could do on the side that would pay well, but doesn't take a lot of time? And that's honestly how I ran into first, it was public speaking. I thought, well, I could go speak at a conference. And I thought, well, what should I speak about? And then I thought, well, John Maxwell, he speaks on leadership and he was a pastor. So let me just do that. So I mean, this is my thinking process is how I got into that. And I started a business teaching leadership. And eventually that business grew to the point where I was making more in that than I was in ministry.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So that's how I started the leadership business. That's why I say it started spiritual, then went into the
Yeah.
leadership business, and then,
Rounding back to spiritual.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
I see what it's cool because I love your candid, explanation because the same path for me. I was at this stage in my life. I was 25, 26 years old. I was tired of being broke. I was like, I need to do something different. I want to go make money. I knew from the get-go, like my whole life, I knew I'm going to be successful. I was like, I'm going to get out there. I'm going to make money. I'm going to do great in life. Like I had this like burning, passion in me, but I didn't know how to get there. And then I stumbled upon Dr. Joe Dispenza, who Frank helped introduce me to. And so I got onto the spiritual path by saying, "Hey, I want to better my life. I want to make more money. I want to have a family." And I love hearing your story because it reminds me a lot of why I got onto the path. You know, and it was eye opening for me because it's funny, you kind of like use your ego in order to boost you into this place to learn to let go of the ego, if that makes sense. So I like used my ego in order to let go of the ego. And on that path, I started to realize, hey, money comes, money goes. It's about getting into this natural flow state. And then from there, you just see different opportunities begin to open. So I love hearing your background because I can really relate to what you're talking about.
Well, I often say that I'm a product of both of my parents equally. So my father, very successful, very pragmatic, science-minded, and then there's my mother, who's Reiki master, crystal boards, sometimes goes to a psychic hotline
Yep.
because she feels like maybe she has psychic abilities. And my father is he's very accommodating and never judges anything like that of hers, but I also know he rolls his eyes at it, inwardly. And so much of my life, I'm, and I'm also a son, so I'm going to gravitate towards my father's approval. So even when I decided to go in ministry, I didn't want to tell him. I
Yeah.
told my mom, but I didn't want to tell him because I knew he would be disappointed by that. And he was. So over time, it's like I started out on my dad's path. I'm going to be successful. Then I went the spiritual path. That was sort of the rebellion towards my father. Uh, but then at some point, I was like, well, no, there's a practical end. I need to make more money. And kind of to your point, Mike, I think when we talk about our ego, our ego, bounces us into spirituality. Sometimes I wonder if it's not our soul kind of tricking the ego, like, hey, you really want this, and then the
You're
ego
totally right.
jumps in full
You're
two
totally
feet, and then the soul's like, hey, I got you, thank you for making that shift.
well
Yeah,
said.
it's like it almost led you into the leadership with the church as an apprenticeship to go into there, and then it's like, okay, I started getting a little agitated, upset, and it's like I think it is the universe or the soul saying, "Hey, it's time to leave this." So if I need to make some bit of outwardly excuse to do so, because I think it is. It's like it's not that you or any of us were on the wrong path. We're always on it. We just don't understand it as great as we do. When we get to a higher level, we're like, man, all these things led me to this place right now. And where is right now going to lead me? And I think as we start to let go of what we think we need to do, because you get to higher levels, things just start moving towards you. Like the ship moves towards the dock and then you get on it. But if you're searching around the dock for the ship, you're going to miss it every time. And and as I start to look at my life, I'm like, wow, because like, okay, you had this feeling when you were younger that you want to be rich. I mean, because I get like a little preview before you go to a movie. You see like the good parts, right? And then you're like, when's that scene coming up? Like, when's that scene in the movie where I'm gonna laugh hysterically come up? I'm like, don't do that because you're gonna miss the whole movie and not understand the part where you're supposed to laugh. It's gonna seem very bland. So we get these little previews that you are going to be abundant, you are going to be wealthy, but in time is a timeline in there. And the more we, because the best way to speed up time is enjoy the moment you're in. We knew this as kids. Like when I hung out with my buddies on a weekend or this summer, it was, we met up at like 9 o'clock in the morning. Next thing you know, the street lights were coming on. Yeah, theoretically, or not theoretically, in actuality, 9 hours went by, but it didn't feel like 9 hours. So if you're enjoying the moment, time speeds up and you're not waiting to become abundant, wealthy. And that's what it is we could stay in this moment. All of a sudden we have these acquisitions and moving around. Next thing you know, I'm like, holy cow, here it is. But when we're waiting for the abundance to show up, it will come up. It will come because everyone I've known that ever wanted to be rich to some degree became it, but then there was no fulfillment. Or when it got there, it wasn't enough. And I'm like, yeah, did you enjoy the moment between thinking about it to when it occurred? And I'm like, no. I'm like, well, from this point on, be most present. And so that's a question I have to ask you is like, when you're working with people, how do you get them to stay present? Because there's so much information out there right now. And I think, and everyone's wanting to go down this journey. Everyone wants to be wealthy, abundant, but also fulfilled. They don't just want money. They don't want to just be, you know, swimming in money with yachts and all this other stuff. They want fulfillment. And a lot of it is it's to give back. So the more money I have, the more I could give back in a sense, my time and everything else. What kind of modalities or what kind of gifts do you have that you give to people to get them to focus on that, to see this?
Yeah, a couple of different things. And, obviously this is a process I still work on myself, to be present. I think is one of the hardest lessons I've had to learn, and some days I'm better than others. But
Yeah.
I think one of the things is getting out of, first of all, just understanding that there's a pattern that all of us are living in. If we're not intentional and present about our life, then the default life is running itself. And one of the things that had really, in a sense, woke me up about the patterns of my life was I started journaling. It was like 15 years ago. I started journaling on this app, and maybe 7 years in, and I was really faithful with it. And then maybe 7 years in, they uploaded or they upgraded the app, updated it, where you could, when you logged in, so it's like whatever, October 7th, and it would say, hey, you have like 7 other entries on October 7th. Would you like to read them? I was like, yeah, sure. What was going on in my life on this day in previous years? And I would start reading the previous entries and I'd be like, well, that's kind of eerie. That literally sounds like what I just wrote today, right? Like same emotions, same feelings, same struggles, same like wrestling inside. Uh, but so much so that I would even copy and paste some of them and send it to friends saying, hey, check this out. Like this was written on the same day, but different years, like kind of eerie, huh? And they'd be like, yeah, that's really weird. But as I did this more, I mean, there were like things that would line up, like crazy events that would, like I'm in the hospital in Costa Rica because I've got stomach pain, and I journal that night to find out that a year ago I was in a hospital in Madrid, Spain, for stomach pain before emergency surgery. Or one day I couldn't get over this flu, so I went into CVS to the Minute Clinic and went and saw the nurse practitioner, and she's getting ready to type up my stuff. I tell her all my symptoms. She opens my file. She goes, wait a minute, you were already in here today. I was like, no, I wasn't. She goes, yes, you were at our beaches location. I'm like, no, trust me, I've been in bed like all day. I'm thinking she's thinking I'm trying to scam her or something.
Yeah.
Then she goes, wait a minute. She goes, oh, that's so weird. You were in here 1 year ago on this day. And she goes, and your symptoms are totally the same. I'm just going to copy and paste them into today's file. And I was like, and all these moments hit me like I was living this copy and paste life, like just copy, paste,
Pattern. Yeah.
right? Until you start to recognize, wait a minute, like I'm letting the program run the show here because I'm not present, I'm not intentional, I'm not dealing with the limiting beliefs that are coming up and presenting themselves in my body. So back to your question about how do we help people, get more present. Part of that is for them to understand that it's like the quote said, the anonymous quote. It said that a man lives only 80 years, but really he lives only 1 year, repeated 80 times.
Yeah.
Until you see that you are the product of your programs, and until you wake up from that, your life is just going to continue to be the same. Even with all your striving and pushing forward, like you're going to keep running into the same loops and same patterns. So it's understanding that, so that you put value on knowing yourself, and you put value on the moment. I'm so guilty of just living in my head all the time and ruminating and not connecting with the body to go, wait a minute, why are my shoulders like hunched up right now? Why do I have this
Oh,
tension? And part of how the new book came out, it had its origins 12, 13 years ago when I just had a crash and burn at work. This is back when I was working in ministry, and I wasn't happy. And I felt really guilty about that because I was like, well, I everyone tells me I have the best job in the world. And I always like smile and nod, but then why do I drive home and I'm so depressed and I'm so unhappy? And I wanted to leave, but I felt like I couldn't, because you feel like you're quitting on God. That's a bad feeling,
yeah, right.
It's a lot of
you
pressure
know?
right there.
And
Yeah.
I even had my boss and mentor tell me, "Oh, you can't quit. You can't quit ministry because you are called here, right?" So that's a belief that we are. Yeah, it's called. You're called here, so you can't quit. Only only God can take you out, which is a terrible thing to say to a
Yeah.
to
Well, in
a young
essence,
minister.
God was trying to take you out by putting pressure on your nervous system.
Yeah.
You know,
For sure,
way I
for
look.
sure.
Yeah.
I
But yeah,
I like that you bring up that aspect of like that had to be a challenge as far as like feeling like, hey, I guess what I'm saying is I notice the more these patterns come up for me, Neville Goddard kind of calls it like the old man dying. You have these different moments where you just feel these identities leaving. Was that like that's probably a difficult mask to take off, this, ministry role. How did you navigate that when you had those feelings come up? I mean, did you just push through and eventually things started to work in tandem and great, you were able to keep it going, or did you have to take full foot off the gas when it came to the ministry?
I'm sort of the slow learner. I need a lot of beating up before I don't go down the dark alley, beaten up several times. So what I mean is, when I had when I had this crash and burn, so that was me just pushing through. And one day so I was doing both jobs, and one day I got home from a road trip and I was really tired and I just all this pain. I didn't understand why. I'm in pretty good shape usually. I went to bed and I woke up the next morning and I was like, something's wrong. Like I couldn't lift my body. I could, but it took Herculean strength. And I'm like, what is this? Like, this is so weird. And then it scared me. I'm like, something's wrong. So I just had no energy. I could hardly even lift my coffee cup off the table. I went to the doctor. They did all these tests for lupus and cancer. And after 2 weeks of all these tests, they're like, nope, nothing's wrong with you. So I'm like, there maybe you're depressed. And I was I was almost bedbound for like 2 months. It really scared me. And I thought I have done something to my body.
Wow.
And that's when I woke up to the impact of when you are living out of alignment, right, with your soul. When you're living out of alignment with your soul and you just push through, you can for a while, but eventually it's just going to catch up. The soul desires to have that conversation with you. And I kept ignoring the appointment. And that's when I stumbled on the work of Dr. James Hollis, who's a Jungian psychoanalyst and
Okay.
just amazing writer. And he writes there about how the soul summons you for a conversation, but most avoid the appointment because we don't want to hear what the soul says, or we're scared of what it might says, or we're just so busy on the treadmill of life pursuing these ego goals that we don't want to listen.
Yeah.
I love how you describe that. That's a perfect way to kind of. I feel like 98% of people have that, in the back of their mind, when it comes to just pushing through, staying in this rat race, this, constant state of unsatisfactoriness.
Yeah. So even if we can interrupt that state at the beginning, right? So when someone is not present, if we can at least just interrupt and say, hey, can you carve out a 15-minute ritual in the morning to
Mm.
just start being mindful? You don't have to meditate, but here's some things to think about. So this is what we do with people. We'll just get them thinking 15 minutes in the morning about their life and one thing before they go to bed. And now for the first time, instead of getting out of bed, getting my coffee, going to my email, right? There's taking this moment to be present. And if we can just get that foot in the door, right, and start to create that habit. Because you know how learning works is that it's one thing for us to tell people information, but the true learning comes from the experience, right? Okay, let me try that. And then all of a sudden, wow, a week of doing this, I'm more calm, or I notice my fears more, or whatever it might be. Or they'll also notice the fight that it is actually to just give 15 minutes,
Yeah.
right? Give 15 minutes to yourself as a gift, because all day you're giving, giving, giving to people. So hey, let's value ourselves enough to give ourselves that gift. And I think that's where it starts for a lot of people, is let's just begin to get in the habit of being mindful.
Yeah, just that one step will lead you to that 1,000 mile or 10,000 mile journey type of thing.
Hmm.
And that's it. I think that's the message. It's very simplistic. It's like, yeah, do a 5 minute breath work when you notice stress coming up. Just something simple like that changes everything. Because, I think we try to bite off too much than we can chew at the time. And that's what overwhelms us. We think, we see people that we want to emulate, and they've already been walking on that mountain for like 20 years. So I mean, you got to start at base camp. But the greatest moment when you talk to a person that's, 20 years up the mountain, the greatest moment was base camp. Right? It was the profound moment, not the greatest moment, but the profound moment of like, hey, you got to start somewhere, so why not here? And I think because you're starting to see a lot of, I don't know if you notice this, but there's a lot of people now inquiring about this stuff, and they've heard all the statements, they heard everything, but they're like, how do I do it? I'm like, it's a lot more simple than you think. Just like learning to play piano is simple, but in the beginning it's difficult because you've never played it before. But after a month, you'll be able to play a song. After a year, you'll be pretty good. Just keep doing it. And all of a sudden you get control of your nervous system by being mindful or breathing, whatever modality you use. And like there is no shortcut here. But when you do it, it's profound, and then you make quantum leaps. And
You're true. You're right about no shortcut.
yeah, there is no shortcut. But what happens is when you go on this path, you make quantum leaps, and it's very difficult to explain that to someone unless they had done it. You know, like I remember Steve Vai, the guitarist. I was just listening to an interview with him. I forgot who was interviewing him, but he was talking about how he used to practice 12 hours a day playing guitar. Well, he doesn't practice 12 hours a day anymore, and he's one of the greatest guitar players to ever. Actually, his teacher was Joe Satriani, and you can never say someone passed somebody, but like the level that Steve Vai went to, I was like, wow, like 12 hours a day. That's why he's at the level he's at. But he learned to enjoy those 12 hours because in the beginning it wasn't joyful, but in the end, it's like, yeah, I enjoy it. I enjoy it. Now he just plays. And so people are like, I don't want to go through that. I'm like, you have to go through it because the agony of not going through it is far worse than going through it. The agony of sitting there meditating is a lot less than not going through meditation. Hence, you ended up in bed for almost 2 months, you know? And that's a great story because your experience is what's going to catalyst or be the catapult for other people to realize, hey, this can be possible.
I can do this too.
But where am I? I'm here. You can't lie to yourself. A lot of people are trying to fake it till they make it. I'm like, put that aside. Be honest with yourself. Where are you? You are a sovereign being. Where are you? What's going on in my life? And just relax into it. You know, you're here, therefore you're worthy. Start there and then see what happens. All of a sudden, you get excited about life. Now you want to start that business or whatever it is. Because once you get that energy generating, Like, ah,
See, we get so beaten down though by like our media, you know, the news, everything. You know, it's constantly beating us into this state where we think we are so unworthy, and where we that we have to earn something in order to feel good. Like my whole life, I never allowed myself to feel good because I didn't think I had earned it yet. I didn't think I had earned the right to relax or calm my nervous system. I was like, you haven't made enough money, you know? You haven't, what have you done to earn this level of relaxation, this level of peace? And that's what my self-talk was, you know, now 8, 9, 10 years ago. Like I had the worst self-talk, and so I had to learn to develop a sense of awareness to that. So like that was the starting point for me, was I had to realize, oh my God, I talk to myself really negatively. You know, I'm co-creating this level of unsatisfactoriness. I'm participating in nothing works out for me. I'm participating in why is this grind so hard? And it was like twisting myself into this pretzel every single day and wondering why the hell is nothing working out for me. And it wasn't until I started to improve upon, you know, how I talk to myself, begin to forgive myself, others, family members, friends, for all this finger pointing I was doing. You're the reason I'm unhappy. This is, if only I grew up in a different family, I would be much better off right now.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
what's the shit that was going through my head. And so it's like I had to develop this awareness to that before I could take that first step of the
yeah,
1,000 steps,
yeah,
10,000 steps.
yeah.
Did you experience some moment like that? This fall flat on your face, rock bottom, or type of thing that kind of woke you up, or was it different for you?
So many moments. So that one moment where I was sick for so long, but even then I sort of just ignored going deeper into, hey, maybe I need to be on a different path. And I just plowed forward. Like once I healed up, okay, let's just plow forward again. But then it didn't take long before so what happens? I changed cities. I went to a different ministry. And so there's like,
Yeah.
it's fresh, it's new, there's new energy. And so you convince yourself, oh, okay, it was just the old place I was in.
It
And
was
so
like you were at a different pharmacy telling you that you know, like think about it, the same pharmacy company knew that you were sick a year earlier.
Yeah.
You were just talking to a different person, and it's like, yeah,
exactly.
it's like holy shit. Yeah,
Exactly. So just I the same thing. We just go, and then I started feeling depressed again and anxious and panic attacks, and I'm like, what is going on? And I remember I took a I don't know, it was like a month sabbatical from work or something, and I came back, and I remember I rounded the corner to where I could see my office, and I just had this like falling feeling. And I was like, "Oh, I don't want to be here." And then that was this clue for me, like, oh, dude, like you gotta quit, putting yourself through all this misery. But you know, as you go through life and you have kids and responsibilities, and if your position, especially like if you have a leadership position or in ministry, there's a lot of people that, in a sense, depend on you, even though you're just as replaceable as anyone else. But you know, you have this feeling like, yeah, I help these people. Then to get rid of all of that is this massive ego crisis. And at least it was for me. That was part of the wall that was stopping me from really authentically pursuing my path. So for so many years, I felt in some ways lost, a little bit like what am I supposed to be doing? Because if I'm doing this but I'm not happy, something's wrong. But yet I didn't have the strength, the ego strength or the soul strength, however you want to look at it, to go, wait a minute, we're gonna follow a different path. It doesn't matter what anyone thinks. We're gonna follow a different path. And I think that's what's so difficult for people is we get into one lane and then to change that lane, whether that's a job, a career, a relationship, it's incredibly difficult because all the devil we know is safer than the devil that we don't.
yeah. And now in neuroscience, they talk about the neuroplasticity of the brain. How prior to that, you go into these thinking patterns, but we can actually change neuroplasticity where it's kind of like when you ski, I'm assuming, because you live in
Yeah.
Colorado, so I'm assuming that.
Right.
But like you notice like at the end of the day, you're on the slope and there was no snow that day. All of a sudden you get stuck in these grooves. No big deal. It still takes you down the mountain. It's still fun. But when you get a fresh fall of snow and now you're in that powder, you could take any route down that mountain with ease. And so when we starting to realize that, I'm like, yeah, we could go into these states or set up our nervous system differently. We change the neurology in our brain. These opportunities, we could see a different path where before, if there's a groove in the ground, you're actually only looking at that groove. And that's kind of where this repetition of cycles come in. And we're actually given these grooves by our society. But it's like, yeah, you just, like you said, the first 15 minutes of just contemplating your life starts to change the neuroplasticity in your brain just like that. And over time, it's like, huh. So it's like every day you want to take your etch a sketcher and scratch it out, and instead of adding more um, diagram onto your etch a sketch, just scratch it out and start over every day. And people are like, that's scary. I'm like, no, because what you're building upon right now is going to collapse. Your foundation is the etch a sketcher that's blank, not the keep building on top of each other, and it's going to collapse. And so we've always worked from bottom down rather than up, you know, and that's really kind of, as I realize life, that's basically it. Every day, just wipe out, can't really wipe out the memory of yesterday, but like what is today going to bring? Yeah, I still run businesses. I still have a great relationship with my wife. I'm not like, sitting on the side of the freeway selling daisies. And like, they're not mutually exclusive people. Like, you can have the abundance and the wealth and stuff like that and fulfillment, you know? They're not separate. But we were someone taught that. And I think in ministry, unless you're like Joel Osteen and some people like that, where they have a lot of money, and people have a problem with that. I'm like, I don't have a problem with the fact that he could drive his private jet. I don't, if he's helping people, I don't care. But people think, oh, one shouldn't be the other. I'm like, we don't know enough to say that to be true. And I believe it is to be true that they're not mutually exclusive. And I think that's what, when people hear that, like, oh my God, I can have both. I'm like, yeah, you can have fulfillment and wealth, you know, directly related to where you're going to go in life. Elon Musk needs $400 billion for some reason, right? His goal wasn't to make that much money, but he's trying to get to Mars and doing multiple other things. So that's part of his story, but doesn't mean you have to get there. I'm like, yeah, your wealth will come directly in relationship to where you are. It always does. And people,
That's the hard lesson right there.
it is. And that's where trust comes in. The great trust in the system and how it works, because there are organizing principles in, quantum physics. They actually could quantify this to a degree, whether you're willing to listen or not. They could quantify this. It works. It's just that you have to trust it every day. And just like you, every day I wake up and I forget it. And I have to remind myself in the morning, I'm like, oh, yeah, you know. And I try to do that before my wife gets up. So when she asks me, how's my morning going? I could say great without lying to her. 'Cause
I
she
love
can
the
think
etch a
I'm,
sketch.
You can give her a
yeah, like,
genuine
it's
great.
great. He's like, yeah. I was like, did you not? Yeah. So I try to get up before her.
I love the etch a sketch idea and that ability to start with a fresh slate. And I think, and this also goes back to something you said, Mike, about this control that we try to control life. There's times I've tried to control my life because I'm fearful of not being enough or not being worthy. And that can be nuanced into a lot of different areas. So for me, it's often about money, right? With how I was raised. And my father, always drove the idea of like work hard, you work hard, and of course you need to make money. It was just like those two things. And I found that there'd be times where I'd be like, no, I can't take a day off. I've got to just be in the office. And sometimes I would just waste time. Like I'm not even that productive, but I'm in the office. I felt better, but I wouldn't be making any money. And then I learned this lesson so many times. One of my kids would be like, Dad, let's go ski today. And I'd be like, but I'm like, okay, how can I say no to my kid? Like, all right, I'll just do it. But with this anxiety of like,
Yeah.
what's this going to cost me to like go and go ski and not make money? And then I would go ski and I would come down off the mountain and I would get my phone and it would be like sale, sale. You just made a sale. People buying
Right.
my courses,
That's
leadership
amazing.
programs. And it's literally like every time I left, I would just make money. I remember going to
I love the hearing that.
Yeah.
taking a vacation. That was
Oh,
another thing that I just never would do. So I was like, all right, I'm going to on a vacation. I've never seen the Amazon. I want to go. I had a friend that invited me. So I go down there in the Amazon, can't get cell service or anything, and then come out as and somebody $5,000 purchase, like while I'm in the Amazon. And I just can't make this stuff up. Like this would just happen when I would let go. And I made the mistake of always trying to figure out like what am I supposed to be doing with my life because I'm not feeling good here. So what is my real purpose? And just missing the boat on, I believe now our purpose is to bring the most authentic, honest version of you to this planet. And that can be expressed in a thousand different vocations. But the purpose is really to bring that version of you because the soul is expansive, it's expressive. Our souls want to express through us and through all the different things we've gone through and experiences and skills we've gained. But to express that is a little bit like we're all meant to play a song that only we can sing. But we can sing that in so many different aspects, in so many different roles, so many different countries. It's not bound by that.
Mhm.
But the real work is how can I bring the best of me to the world? And why that caught, like when I didn't understand that, I'm always searching for what's the thing I'm supposed to be doing. And the confirmation will be I'll be making money. Like that was sort of my paradigm. And so I'm throwing mud at the wall all the time. Like which one's going to stick? Okay, let's try this idea. Let's try this idea. Exhausting myself and then feeling like a failure because like, well, none of this stuff's working. Maybe I'm not meant to be an entrepreneur and realizing that, wait a minute, maybe you're actually just meant to bring who you are to this world and how do you want to do that?
Mhm.
And honestly, that's a lot of how the latest book came to be, right? It's so different than anything I've been. It's in some ways a leap off of that. And some people will read it and think, is this the same guy that wrote that leadership book that my company uses? It's like, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, or maybe he's not the same guy. Maybe this is the more real version of him. I don't know.
that's
Yeah, I
powerful.
heard you talking about this on another podcast about the book. You know, there was a gentleman you met that actually did these mountain climbs, like excursions, and he kept asking you, and you're like, nah, I can't do it. I don't have the money or the time. And then one day you just like, you know what, I'm doing this. And you went on with him. It's like, so one day you actually got on the very ship that you were waiting to come in and you decided to do it. And I'm not sure what your mental status or your financial status at the time, but you just took the leap. And that seemed to, when I was listening to it, I could tell when you were telling the story, that seemed to open something up in you, making that choice. It doesn't mean you go on a mountaineer trip every year. It's just in that moment where you constantly said no to this thing, you finally said, you know what? I'm going to say yes. And I like that story because that's really it. Like the universe is always giving us that. Here's a guy that asked you, I don't know how many times he asked you want to go on a mountaineer trip, and you turned it down. But I'm like, okay, here's another cycle that the universe is giving you, and I keep saying no, but yet inside I want to do it. And then it's like, okay, you're going to say yes today, and the universe will. You know what's beautiful about the universe? It won't stop giving it to you until it starts screaming in your face. It's just like if you make a wrong turn, you didn't listen to GPS, the GPS will just recalculate you all day long till you finally listen. You know?
I think that, yeah, that's a healthy way to look at life. That
Yeah.
because so many of us were afraid to make the wrong choice
Yeah.
and do something that's going to cost us. But if you think of it like the GPS, yeah, you actually might make the wrong choice.
Yeah.
At least not the wrong choice. You might make the choice that's not the best, but it's
That's
gonna reroute you.
Yeah. Yeah, because it'll appear instantly. If I just make a right hand turn and I'm like, oh, this is not working out, just make a U-turn. But if I sit at the crossroads all day long contemplating it, I am stuck in what we call purgatory. And this is where most people are. So they just sit in the car at the crossroad and watch the cars go around them, and some go left, some go right. And okay, if I sit here long enough, more cars that go to one direction, I'm going to follow that direction. Then you find out it's like after the end of the day, it's like 50-50. Like I'm screwed still. Like you're sitting there still waiting. It's like just make a turn. Just do it.
For sure.
See what happens, and you'll learn. The universe teaches you in that. If it was the wrong turn, so to speak, it really wasn't the wrong turn. It's just saying, hey, make a U-turn. Just go this way. But if you don't make the turn, it can't give you any more further information. You're dead in the water. And that's where a lot of us are. We're stuck because we're not getting more information. Like, are you getting in your car and driving? If you don't, the GPS doesn't talk to you. GPS is like, hey, how come you haven't gotten in your car and headed to San Diego yet? You know, can you imagine having that weird conversation? Hey, you told me a week ago you wanted to go. What's going on? But once I get in my car, I'm like, okay, make a right. And if I make the right, it then awards me another bit of information, you know. And if I'm paying attention, I do it. And if I'm not, I get a little bit lost, but it gets me back. And this is how the universe operates. It's understanding the physics behind it that's changed my life. Do I always listen? Hell no. Hell no. I don't always listen. But my wife is there to remind me of that.
Well, that's the ego, you know. That's
Yeah.
how it works. It keeps popping up. No, this is better for you, you know. Hey, you don't want to do that. What if this were to happen?
Yeah.
You know, hey, is that the safest move? It's funny how we have like that system built in, you know, which is it does serve a purpose. It absolutely does. You hear all these new age people talking about, oh, kill the ego, lose it. No, you need the ego. That's your character. That's the identity. You know, you come here with this identity, you know, and it's through that you find yourself. And so it's like it's not about killing it. It's not about destroying it. Sure, you know, you want to lose it, but it's
Yeah. Because
everything's here for a
yeah,
purpose.
what do they say? The ego is a great servant, but a horrible master.
Perfect.
So keep it as your servant. Like, yeah, you know, and that's how I start looking at my life. We are a servant. We're like your job is serving people at the
Totally.
highest level. I'm like, you know, that's really what you do. Everyone's a server. They just don't realize it. And first you have to serve yourself in order to serve others. And when you're serving yourself, like you said, when you serve yourself by going skiing with your son, um, you were serving others at the same time because someone bought a program that it wasn't like, hey, they bought a program. It's like you're helping them with that program. Like they needed that. And you became this magnet, electromagnetic field, and all of a sudden, where otherwise they might not have found it, now you got two upset people on the planet, you know, or three upset people. Like it's a domino effect. So when we stay in joy, we actually create like this vent horizon into the black hole for other people to get pulled into it. People get I'm like, it's not scary, it's beautiful. So it's like, no, my job is to keep my nervous system at bay. I mean, nervous system in control, and all of a sudden I start to see things happening. But then I'm like, oh, I'm in control. And there goes my ego. I shut down the portal, you know. But after a while, I'm like, okay, just just go and relax, go on vacation, go have a conversation. All of a sudden, things start to work. We're not in charge, other than our nervous system or how we look at life, our perspective. And it was like, wow, things just unfold naturally. Even, they unfold naturally if you're depressed because you get more depression experiences. And that's the lesson I've learned. And that's why I like to listen to you. I listen to several podcasts with you on. I love your message. I like how you portray it. And you,
That ex I was gonna say that expedition was definitely it was definitely eye-opening and life-changing. And I wanted to comment about the your statement about the ego is a great servant. And I think of I would not be, I mean, I've given like 3,000 presentations now. I'm good on stage. I've built up that skill. But a lot of the reason I built up that skill was ego, is because I don't want to fail here. I don't want to look stupid. I spent I spent 15 years just total imposter syndrome. But the benefit of that was it drove me to practice. Like I got to get better. Like I got to study. I got to learn. So, you can look back and say, well, it was a fear-based motivation. Yeah, for sure. But it it did serve me to a level of mastery. Now, at some point, I had to. I still remember the day I was going to do some training at a hospital, but it was a friend of mine. It was his company, and so I was filling in to do him a favor. So he like sent me the training info, which I'd seen this stuff before. But anyways, I go to the hotel the night before and I'm all like, okay, I gotta like review all this and amping up the stress again. And then I was like, wait a minute, like how many years have you done this? Like, do you need to stress about this right now? And I was like, no, I don't. Like, trust yourself. Like, just trust yourself. And so yeah, I just closed the binder, showed up at the hospital the next day, and I was like, yeah, just trust yourself. You know this. And so then I did it. I did just fine. But that was more freeing. But that freedom wouldn't have come without the mastery. And part of mastery came because the ego was involved. And I think as we get older, we as we get more, I guess as we examine our life more, we're able to start to see the mixed motivations. And so, for example, I remember I used to keep this stone in my pocket. It was a goal stone, and this actually makes its way into the book as for the character, but it literally comes from my life. I carried this goal stone, and I had engraved on it $1 million because I wanted to have $1 million, cash in my bank. Well, I carried it with me every day and felt it every day on plane rides, going through TSA. I mean, it's with me every single day. Well, 3 years of having this with me, my bank account is no higher than it was 3 years before.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, what's going on? Like, am I just a failure that I can't do this? And then I just asked myself, why do you want this goal? Like, why do you really want to make $1 million? What's that going to do for you? And as I thought about that, the answer that came to me was, then I'll feel successful, which means I wasn't feeling successful. And that's when I realized that the goal for the $1 million wasn't actually about the money. It was a goal to take away my shame.
Yeah.
And so that's then what I had to start to deal with. And so much of that was imprinted from just how I was raised and what's important in life. So that's why if we don't have those moments of being present, we would 3 years. Think about that. 3 years. This thing's in my pocket, and I never once stopped to ask, "Wait a minute, why am I? Why do I want this?" But then once I got present about that, the truth comes up, and we don't judge it. We just like, okay, it is what it is. So, but do I want to continue in this? So now this is agency, right? This is now taking control back in your life to say, well, let me actually captain the ship here. I don't want to live where I'm trying to reach a goal so I can get rid of my shame. That's actually, I don't want that. I can drop this shame right now.
Bingo.
So that's why I think it's so important to live an examined life.
Did you find yourself come to this realization of like, oh, it's this constant state of, not having or lack that's keeping me separated from this $1 million or that feeling? Because like for me, I began to realize the reason I like wouldn't didn't feel deserving enough or that I hadn't earned something. I realized that was an internal state, an internal feeling. And the more I began to relax into, myself, my worthy self, which we are all worthy, we're inherently worthy. We come here, perfect human beings, and we learn all of this lack. Did you did you kind of find yourself shifting your actual state, if you will?
It was that was the beginning at least of a process to go like, wait a minute, if you are needing to have a money in your bank account to feel successful, then it's time for us to redefine success. And I've had to do this in many different areas. And actually one was just recently. And you guys know, as you do this work, it's not like, oh, hey, I finished the work. I'm done now, so I can like go and enjoy my life.
Right.
So, and this is even while, I'm taking groups through what we call these climbs. But something happened with one of my kids where I wasn't able to help them out the way I would like to from a financial perspective. And I flash back to my father helping me out to buy my first house, back in, I don't know, a long time ago, and with a down payment. Well, I got three kids all in college right now, and not a month goes by that one of them isn't like, Dad, I can't make rent, or Dad, my laptop died and I don't have money to, get another one. And, I'm the wallet helping them out. But still, one of them had a need and I couldn't help them. And I thought like I felt so bad about it. I felt so triggered. I was like, what's going on here? And then I realized, like, what am I feeling? I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling like I am not a good father. I feel like I have failed. I am falling short. It was just all these crazy emotions were coming up. And I'm like, well, what's driving this? And it was this belief that, this is what a good father is. A good father is able to help out at any time. But then you examine that and you're like, well, that's not true. And if I want to do it dollar per dollar, I probably have given my kids more than my father gave me. It's just I've never added it up before. And then that brings me back to one of my commitments in life, which is to be a good father, which I've already defined as being a constant support, unconditional love in their corner. But that helped me identify that belief that was still tied to your worth and money and what you're providing. And I thought, okay, I got to let that go and let that shame go, because what makes me a good father are these things. So I spent a couple days just focus on this is what makes me a good father is by being this and this and this to my kids. Well, interestingly enough, a few days after that, without me even connecting, a few days after that, I just had this idea and I sent each of my kids this text. And it was basically saying, hey, you know what? My father didn't really share a lot of lessons he's learned in life, whether it was through his achievements or his shortcomings. I said, I have a lot of lessons that I could share. Would you want to hear some of those lessons from time to time, life lessons? And so all three of my kids who don't always respond when I text them, they all responded back, yes, please. Yes, dad, this would be awesome. Yes, this is what dads do. And it's like, and then I felt proud. I felt like this is being a good dad. And then I realized later that the idea came out of the elevated identity. It wasn't like I'm like, okay, what should I do now as being this kind of dad? No, it's just I dropped that shame belief, recommitted to this is what I believe a good dad is. And then a couple days later, that idea just flowed out of me. And I texted my kids that. So is consistent with that. And it was just a nice reminder that when we get rid of those lower states, step into that higher version of ourselves, then that version has a life it lives
Yeah.
that actually gets us to the goals that are the most important to us.
And that's a great point. And that's the point I always try to drive into people. It's like a lot of times people are holding on to something and in the aspect of holding on, they think they're going to fall. I'm like, no, what you're holding on to is holding you down. And the idea that the hot air balloon needs more hot air. No, it doesn't. And when you cut that tether, you get up to a level where you can see how everything's working out. So when you let go of that idea, that concept of how a father's supposed to be, all of a sudden, this idea to send them all a text, and like it was always there. We don't get to that altitude. And the beautiful thing about this is there's a lot more altitude to gain. It's infinite. So we're going to keep climbing, but like, just like a hot air balloon, it goes up to certain altitude and then all of a sudden the jet stream is what pulls it. Like you have very little control of a hot air balloon, but that's the purpose of it. But yet you do have control of the hot air balloon. And it's more of that than a direct route to somewhere that you're missing out on. So when people learn to just trust, let go of that tether and see what happens. Hey, you can grab back onto it. It's not a big deal. If it doesn't work out, you can if you make a right hand turn. If it doesn't work out, you can make a left hand turn and come back to that stop sign. So just do it. And they start to like, wow, up here I see things higher. I'm like, yeah, the higher you get up the mountain, the more of the valley you see. But there's more of the mountain to become. So then all of a sudden, every day you wake up excited. What's going to be on my mountain today? My goal isn't to get to the top, by the way, but my goal is to move in the direction towards the upward direction. It's is it a goal or is it a direction I'm living? Well, you could put them both together, but it's more of a direction because if I meet a goal, I might stop and sit down and fall asleep. And then, but if I have a direction, I'm just gonna energetically keep moving. And you have plateaus. That's how life works. Like every step has a plateau, but each step elevates you higher. So I love that message because that's really what it is. A lot of people are waiting. It's almost like they're waiting to hear Stairway to Heaven while they're listening to a jazz station. I'm like, you got to get out of that station. It's not going to happen unless they have a jazz version of Stairway to Heaven. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe it does exist. But take a chance and turn that dial, let go and just see what happens. And all of a sudden, like, wow, like when you went on the skiing trip, all of a sudden a $5,000 deal came in. And it wasn't even the $5,000. It was the acquisition that happened while you weren't focusing on it.
Mhm.
It's more of that. It's not, after a while, it's not even the money, it's the synchronicity of how beautiful things work. Because when you start getting money, it's not really the money anymore. Well, the money shows a degree of, am I moving in the right direction? But money comes and goes, so you can't really value that. It's that feeling of elevating, even if it's 1 inch a day. It doesn't matter. Like, I've been taking the steps all my life. Some people have taken an elevator. Some people have taken an escalator. I'm a one step at a guy, but when I turn around, I've gotten a lot higher, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that one step. I don't need to take the elevator. That's my story.
I think my
Yeah.
favorite part about this show and doing and having guests like you on, James, and like listening to Frank and everything is starting to normalize these experiences. See, like that feeling of getting off the mountain and bling 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 bling, you're watching your phone. Uh, that's how the laws of this universe work, of this reality work. And we don't ever talk about that. No, we go get trained to be good little employees and pushed along like cattle through this created system. And we're taught this is normal. If you think outside of this box, you are abnormal. That is woo woo. And, you're just putting your head in the sand. That's what we're taught inside this box. And if you just have the courage to kind of peek outside or allow yourself to feel those moments, the universe right there, just like it has to, because this is how these laws work. And the more we normalize these things, the more people are going to find their path, find their way,
Yeah.
find their success, find their abundance. We're all sitting on these buckets of gold, complaining about not having enough, not realizing it's been there all along. And so that's why I love having your story shared, different individual stories shared, because we are normalizing, how this reality actually works. And so the more, at least this worked for me on my path, the more I began to hear these different stories and lectures and people share, I was like, there is so much here. This is not just coincidence. This is not just woo woo. There's something to this, and then that gives you the kind of like the gusto or the guts to take that next step or allow yourself to feel peace, allow yourself to feel worthy, and you watch it begin to just snowball and grow. So I just wanted to kind of share that.
Well, Mike, when you said the idea of laws, that's so right. And I didn't grow up religious, but after college, I entered into the world of Christianity, but quite heavily, right? Because I was actually working in it. Well, especially in Western Christianity, here's what's funny is that, and anyone who's listening to this, if you regularly attend a church, you can relate with what I'm saying is that when people start talking about um, the stuff we're talking about, some Christians can really feel uncomfortable, like, oh, wait a minute, like, but this isn't in the Bible. Like, we're, this is, or, you know, Lord forbid, don't bring up the word manifestation because now we're talking about evil things. But one of the things that I learned early on, I remember as I was learning the Bible and studying it, there's a story about a woman who had a health condition for she was bleeding for 12 years and no one could cure her. And in her mind, she gets this idea. She hears that Jesus is coming through her town and she thinks, if I can just get close enough to him and grab his cloak, I'm going to be healed. I just know I will. And it's this amazing story as there's this mob crowd following him, running into him and everything. And here's this poor, frail woman who's got this condition. She works her way through the crowd and just reaches it out, probably between two guys' shoulders and grabs his cloak and then pulls back and she feels this energy go through her. Well, the cool part of the story is Jesus stops and he's like, hey, who just touched me? And those around him are like, what do you mean? Like, we're all touching you. Like, everyone's like bumping into you. And he goes, no. He says, somebody touched me because power went out of me. And I was always amazed at that story because it was like here's a woman who stole a healing. It wasn't like a prayer. It wasn't like, God, please heal me. She'd been saying those prayers, but she did something and this power went into her and healed her. And Jesus himself was like, hey, you just took that from me. And then later, when she identifies herself, oh, that was me, he says, hey, your faith has healed you. And it's this idea of faith, this belief that God, this is how I see it. God has set up the universe in ways that we still don't understand. That there are physics, there's even physics to things like prayer. And so when we don't understand something, we spiritualize it, and that gives us a way to kind of grasp it. But I think of other passages that taught me about these laws. And one of them has to do with in the church about giving, right? There's passages about giving, and hey, one of them is about giving a tithe. And it talks about how just basically trust and give a tithe and wait and see if you don't receive back 100 times more. Well, there are many times in my ministry career where I would be broke and I'm like, I can't tithe, I can't do that. So I would stop doing it. And then I would be like, wait a minute, like I got to just trust that something good will happen. And so then I would just write that check again. And then all of a sudden, literally like money would come into my life or somebody would come in and do something for me. And that made me realize like these laws really are universal. They're not just for Christianity. They're universal. And I think a lot of people that are great at manifesting, they're just tapping into the fabric of how the universe is set up, right? There's these laws. And part of that goes back to like the work you guys do, right? Just helping people understand and to live in accordance with those, your state, right? Your consciousness as we elevate that. It unlocks things in us versus living all of our life in a fearful state. Most people do that throughout their life. Doesn't mean that they can't have a decent life, but they will be so short of what their potential was or what they were called here to be.
Yeah. And they carry a burden because I know I do have friends that are monetarily wealthy, but they have this great burden that they have to keep doing what they did last time, and if the money gets more, now they have to keep doing more. And like I find that very interesting. So they don't even take time to go on vacation with their family, but they feel good that they could send their family off on vacation. And I'm like, it's not what you're doing. It's a state. So when they're actually doing it, they're in this beautiful state. But then when they want to go do something else, they fall out of that state. It's kind of like the rock star. When they're on stage, they're in this beautiful place, but when they're off stage, they have to take drugs to get back there. I'm like, because they feel the only time they get in that state is when they're playing music or making money. I'm like, that's not true. That state can be granted at any moment of time in life. It's just the acquisition with the state will be different when you're hanging out with your family than you're making transactional with a business person. So it's about learning to stay in that state and do different stuff because we think, oh, I feel this way because I made money. I'm like, no, you got into that state, therefore you made money. But if you got in that state, therefore you make a great relationship. So there's only one state. It's just different ways of appropriating that state. People don't think they always sug like my money is really good, but my relationships are bad. I'm like, well, your money's soon going to suffer if you don't fix everything because everything is just from one place. And we know that because if anyone that puts too much time into work, they tend to lose their family. Anyone puts too much time into having to hang out with somebody loses their business. Like when you step back, it's already done for you. It's the energy. But you have to trust it. And the way to trust is do increments, like you said, 15 minutes in the morning, give yourself. And eventually you're going to give yourself the whole day to meditate. But it's not going to be sitting in a room with candles. You'll be meditating while you're working or helping somebody out or meditating while you're at the gym, meditating while you're on a podcast. It's just what I do with the energy is going to change throughout my day, throughout my life. But the energy is who we are. We just cloak it to where we think we have to go find them. Like there's nothing to find. You have so much garment on you that you can't see. That's the whole in the Bible too when they talk about garment. The garment is cloaking us, but the spirit is within that. And we understand that just lift the cloak off and there you appear. So it's not about adding stuff, it's about removing stuff or letting go of stuff. And we do that, you start to see things acquiesce and things are beautiful. It's amazing. And then when you do that, now it's quantifiable to you. Now faith is easy, you know? But then it's like, then you're always, challenged to like, okay, let's go higher up the mountain. I'm like, oh, I know God was going to do this again. And then you have to create another understanding of physics. Like driving a car is different than flying a plane, but gravity's still involved in both of them, just different ways of using gravity. And that's never going to change. So people go down this road. I'm like, when's this going to ever end? Nothing. But just if you keep trusting it, you're going to be excited rather than be anxious. There's a difference. Same energy, but one has a belief that this is not going to work out. And the other one's like, man, let's see what happens. And you're like, okay. And that's the brilliance of it. That's why me and Mike do this. I know that's why you do it, to share these stories, because we're at this precipice right now, and it seems to be evident in society where people are thirsty for something and distracting themselves on Instagram isn't doing it anymore. It's certainly not. And I
I
think,
think,
yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
no, it was, yeah, yeah.
Well, when I think about, as you said, how people just distract themselves. So a lot of my audience is from the corporate world because that's where my business was, right? So then I've got this new book comes out, which is really about like all the stuff we're talking about. So, and we pull people into this program called The Climb, where we're doing all this work. But what I've noticed, there's a big difference between working with entrepreneurial people and people in corporate. Because a lot of people in corporate, they just have fallen asleep and they're just going through their jobs. It's like the matrix is so heavy for them. And part of it is just them waking up because here's the thing, if people don't wake up, life will wake you up later, whether that's going to be how's AI going to come in and start impacting jobs. All of a sudden your job's gone and now you're like, whoa, that'll wake you up because then you're like, oh my goodness, I got to reinvent myself. And it seems like we're always in need of a crisis to be the catalyst point. But the point is, we don't need a crisis to be a catalyst point. We just need to recognize that there's so much more potential of us that we're not tapping into, right? There's a bigger story, there's something bigger meant for us. Um, and it starts with just those little steps, the steps you guys teach, the steps that we've been talking about. But that's what I've noticed. I think I'm an optimistic guy, even when I think about AI and the potential good things. But also, when I look at AI closely, I also have this feeling of this dread, like, oh no, what's this going to mean for so many people? And is the world ready for what I think might happen? That's negative. But again, we're a resilient species as long as we can tap into what I call the soul, right?
Our
But
Buddha
I
nature.
think that's why people like you are moved to do what you do, like your ministry. So now your ministry is at a different level
Well,
because more people are going to need you in
exactly.
this transition. I think that's why it
Exactly.
is.
Exactly.
More and more people are going to need this, fulfillment of platform because they're going to lose their jobs based on AI. But I'm like, they're not going to lose their life though. And all of a sudden they'll be like, oh my God, I didn't realize this was possible. I'm like, yeah, I've been thinking about this since I was 5, but I was making too much money to quit my job, and
Mhm.
now AI came in and did it for me. And then you're there to put that safety net under them, like, hey, you're gonna be okay.
Those same people who read those corporate books are like, "Hey, I trust this guy,"
Yeah.
and look at this age of Aquarius, what we're transition. This is all happening, and I'm very optimistic about the AI. I think AI is going to blow the lid off of everything that's been held over our eyes for the last 6 years.
Yeah.
We have free energy. We've had it. We can pull water from the atmosphere. We're not in a water shortage. All of these false things that have been made to keep us contained, I think AI is going to blow the lid off of. And I think AI is going to allow each one of us to step into these leadership positions to help guide those who are like, hey, the veil's coming off. What do I do? What do I do? Hey, this is good. This is great. We'll get through this together, you know? And so I love what you're saying there. And I love how you tied in, you know, the AI. And these are what our paths are about. Is as this transition unfolds, this is why we incarnated here. This is why we came here at this time. We've had how many lives we've had, et cetera. But we chose to be here at a specific time. And this transition is very cool to me. And I'm like watching it unfold with like this like, holy crap, this is happening. And it's exciting. And yeah, I love that feeling.
Yeah, for sure. And
Yeah.
everyone has a dream inside of them. It's just for most people, it's been buried. And one of the things I love is when we start working with someone and just getting them to start looking at the breadcrumbs in their life, thinking about their soul. It's like all these wake up moments happen where someone goes, I just had this memory today. I had wanted to do this career, but then I didn't because I didn't think my mom would be happy. And I'd be like, well, that memory came up to you for a reason. Like it's the breadcrumbs. Doesn't mean you have to now go do that career, but just there's reasons there. And someone else is like, you know what? I always wanted to write a book, but I just never did. So I started writing again. These are those things. It doesn't mean you have to change your job or take on a new career, but it just there's parts of you that have to wake up and come online that gets you out of this matrix 9 to 5, just going through the treadmill. I can't wait for the weekend, and then oh, it's Sunday night. I got to go back to work, and nah, it's not a way to live your life.
No. There's an experience. I had this experience. I want to ask you if you had this experience, and this is help. This helps out when I talk with when I coach people. It's when I do make these decisions, they became the next logical step because of the previous decision. So people like they're trying to like, how do I go from here to here? I'm like, there's a stairway in between. Like just keep making steps. You're not throwing caution to wind here, people. Like you're making one step at a time. And over time you realize, oh my God, this keeps working. But if you're walking on a flat surface, nothing's gained. But if each step is what, like 4 inches, 6 inches, I don't know what it is, but you keep elevating, it's a next logical step. It isn't like if I start to think like what kind of acquisitions is Elon Musk doing? I'm like, I don't know. And it'd freak me out. But I'm like, from my, but to him, what he's doing is the next logical step. It's not difficult for him to do it because why? Because he's at this different level in a financial way. And that's how it is. People like, I'm like, no, it's not throwing caution to the wind. It's first having self-talk like you talked about. And then all of a sudden, make this step. You don't quit your job. You start working on the book when you can. Next thing you know, you've written the book and you didn't quit your job. Maybe you like your job better now. You may never leave your job. Who knows? But you feel fulfilled in the job. Now you realize I have a purpose in my job. Like these things can happen. People are always looking for this outward change. I'm like, it's an inward change. You could probably live in the same house your whole life and one day look at it, it's the most brilliant place I've ever lived. The thing is, I have to move. I'm like, why? Because I was here my whole life. I'm like, that's it's how you feel about it. That's the gift, not the thing. Yeah, you might move, you might do this. That does happen. But if you can love where you are, you just get more of love of where you are and where you are and where you are. And that it's the next logical step. And I just want to let people know that it's not this bare knuckle white thing jumping off the thing, hoping the parachute opens up. I'm like, it's gonna open up, you know? It's gonna open up, but you might not want to start on the tallest mountaintop when you do that. You know, maybe start somewhere else, and then you elevate to that place. It's just the nature of life, and that's
Yeah,
where,
it's that law of continuity, right?
yeah,
If the step's too big, either you don't take it, or I mean, you just can't imagine it.
yeah,
It's like, do you guys remember? I know you've seen the movie The Matrix.
yeah,
I've referenced it a couple of times, but there's one line where when the AI is telling them that we actually created a utopia for humans, but you guys kept rejecting it.
yeah,
And that's such a brilliant line because it's true. Like we, okay, if we are going to have a utopia, it has to be after a climb. If we are going to have a summit, a mountaintop experience, it only comes in the context of a struggle. And then once we've had that and we have that moment, okay, that's the gift, the whole package. But we're wired to then want to do it again, right? That's what also gives purpose and meaning to us is the struggle. As Jordan Peterson says, we are born to walk uphill, And as I say, we are born to climb. We are, and even the science is clear on this, right? When we have specific things that we're trying to reach in our life that are challenging for us, it increases our level of performance. Now, you can take that from a pure, like, yeah, just grind it out and push your goals, or you can take it more on a spiritual route and be like, what's that next level of me that I want to bring to the world? And again, that's not easy. You got to do the inner work and you've got to make the hard choices. But they're easier in the context of your spiritual nature versus just I got to make $1 million and get it in my bank account because uh, that's going to be difficult.
Yeah, because now you're
What's the
objectifying
way?
it, so but it's a feeling.
I was really excited to interview you, James, because my mom worked in human resource her whole life. She was the head of human resource for a big grocery chain, Safeway, and now it's Albertsons, blah blah blah. So she's done HR her whole life, and so she's trained managers. And I've been having who is it? John Maxwell, the Carnegies, all these people down in front of my face since I was a little freaking kid. And my mom's been, all about this my whole life, leadership training, blah, 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 forever, like as long as I can remember. And it was so funny because as I woke up, 8, 9, whatever the years ago now, when these started to click, I began to see how much this leadership path she always talked about mirrored the spiritual, awakening that I found myself going through. And so, like, I wanted to kind of ask you about that, especially when you explained, okay, it started spiritual, then it kind of led me to this, it drove me to, create leadership and then back. Did you start to see all of these, like, all of these things mesh and line up with like the leadership stuff you were teaching, writing about, and then like the spiritual path?
For sure. So when I first started teaching on leadership in the corporate world, I had so many insecurities because I would be like, oh, I'm just a minister. What would I know about leadership?
Business.
And little did I realize that actually few things cut your teeth in leadership like ministry because you're leading, you got paid staff, but then you got this massive group of volunteers. You can't fire them, you can't kick them out, unless they've really done something egregious. And so you just got to find a way to work with them. So just years of doing that, I'd really developed great leadership skills. And in fact, I asked John Maxwell that same question, and he's like, oh, yeah, for sure. That's the best. Some of the best leaders, they come out of the not for profit world. But I had compartmentalized it, right? Oh, there's this church world. Now, here's this corporate world. And then when I got speaking in the corporate world, the insecurity led me to be like, I got to add value. So I got to bring science and research and studies. And so I still remember this one day. I'm speaking to this group of executives, and I'm going through some psychological study they did that excites me, right? And but or the 5 ways of here's how to give more autonomy to your staff, and I can go through all that. But then you start seeing people like drift off, and then I start telling him about a story of being on the golf course and how this one golfer was mad at me and we almost got in a fight. And now like all the executives, everybody's like leaning in, listening to me. And I'm like, oh, maybe this isn't about all this value. Like, or maybe I'm defining value wrong. Like that I'm like, oh, the value's got to be in these great tips and all this great wisdom. Maybe people just need to connect. Maybe they actually want someone to actually speak in a way that their soul hears it. And so these are all like little seeds along the way. So it's almost like understood that in the church world. And so even as a preacher, I would be like, vulnerable from the stage. But then in the corporate world, I was different. And even though I was good on stage, there was still a disconnect. And then it was one of my friends who had been a preacher and now was speaking in the world. He said, oh, he says, yeah, you got to just be vulnerable. And so I started adding that into my presentations where I talk about, something with our family or failures or these moments, and people began like leaning in even more because as Plato said, everyone is carrying a heavy load, right? Be kind. Everyone is carrying a heavy load, and this is where we connect. And so, Mike, this is actually quite recent now for me, is bringing sort of the message from the call to climb now back into the corporate world And even this cohort that I'm taking through is all corporate people, but they're loving this. Like they're showing up Sunday night for class and they're doing the homework and they're trying to meditate or do that reflective work because they don't get this,
Yeah.
right? They don't get this. And a large part of my audience is HR people. I always speak at HR conferences, and they're very people centered, as you obviously, as you know, and with your mom. So I think there's a great hunger and thirst for this. I just didn't have the confidence before to sort of let that guard down. And as I'm doing that, I'm realizing, oh, okay, people are leaning in even more. So that's part of my journey, right? I would say that's where I am right now. It's just beginning to trust I can post deeper stuff. Let's say on LinkedIn. It doesn't have to be about, here's how to make your staff intrinsically motivated. I can also post about, hey, when you feel like quitting. And those posts are actually getting more engagement than some, here's my 5 steps.
Because people want to know that. Like, years ago when you read a lot of these books, they were almost manuscripted written. So, and they give you these great formulas and everything else. But I want to know about the author. Like, what struggle did they go through? And then when they started interviewing these authors, I remember reading Tony Robbins' books, but then I would see him in interviews. I'm like, oh man, all right, maybe you should write a book on this. Talk about how, when you were a young boy, some person brought food to your house, but your father refused to take it. And like you just thought he was perfect at the moment in which you did because he was already Tony Robbins, so to speak, or anyone, even a spiritual person like Ram Dass, right? When I heard Ram Dass, he was already Ram Dass. But then when you start hearing the stories, I'm like, all right, this is relatable. Even though I was never a professor at Harvard University and was taking LSD and went off to India, but there was something relatable about he was in this great search to find out there's nothing to search for. You already are that. And then all of a sudden, whatever job you're doing, whether it's in corporate, you're going to just do it happier. Doesn't mean you quit the corporate world, right? Because, hey, if more people in the corporate world, like people hate corporate, I'm like, why? I'm glad there's someone creating a corporation that gets the ability to where you can get anything you want. I just want people in that world to be happy, not to leave it. People are like, let's get rid of corporate. I'm like, it's not the object. It's the way we feel about the object. And more people are starting to search into it. And obviously you're hitting the corporate world because of that. And that's a great thing.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
You're melding these two paths together for that corporate
Yeah.
space.
You're going to start seeing wars end, fighting amongst each other end, because we all have different viewpoints on for a reason. Not mine's better, but we're all threads of like threads in a tapestry, and if we pull one out, everyone's going to notice the tethered in that tapestry. I'm like, but if everything's just woven in perfectly, you actually see back, you see the big picture. And I believe humanity is the greatest technology that's ever been on this planet. We just haven't put the components together to work together. We're starting to though, and we have to be careful that we don't be like, okay, my part of my computer's working, the hell with the rest. I'm like, no, no, no. Everyone, we got to put it out there. But again, stay present. Who's in front of you? Don't worry about the world stage. Who's in front of you? If you're at the grocery store, talk to that person with your heart. Whoever's in front of you, give them your attention. That's how we change the world. Not you. One day you might be on the big stage. You, that shouldn't be a goal though. Right in front of you, and one day you might be on the big stage. Like I don't think Tony Robbins thought he was going to be on a stage as big as he would or is, but it was that one little thing he did, right? But not everyone needs to be on the big stage. And it's like,
No,
wow,
you're right.
this is how we change the world because once we all start to work together, we won't care about the big stage. We won't like because everything's like, okay, what would life be in utopia? I'm like, well, I'm willing to find out. I'm willing to see. But right now, we live in such contrast that it's very difficult to contemplate what it would look like if there was no wars. Because the history that we study have always had a war. But there was always peace too. We just don't write about that. So we'll see what happens. but I have great faith. I'm going to keep going because these little moments are brilliant, even if you're in the eye of a war or eye of a storm.
In one of my leadership in one of my leadership presentations, I talk about you on your worst day versus you on your best day, and how there's quite a gulf between. Let's do it this way: you on your best day, you at your worst day. There's this massive gap in potential, and from a leadership perspective, I make the point that, hey, we can help raise people's level of potential. And if you got 10 people and you raised it 10%, it's like you just added an employee that you don't have to pay for. Like, that's the idea of engagement. But the same can be said about humanity, right? If you think about humanity at its best versus humanity at its worst, is a massive gulf. Like, humanity at its worst is can be pretty ugly, right? Like, it just can be terrible. And yet humanity at its best, which is what you're talking about, Frank, like this tapestry, is something beautiful, right? That's divine. That to me is God in the flesh right there, is when we all embrace, that Christ consciousness, and we can live like that, love like that. Um, Man, maybe that's when we all graduate. Maybe something unlocks and a new level opens up. Maybe it's like the confetti falls from the sky and, like, okay, finally you guys made it. Now here's the next level.
The
I'm not sure.
spaceships finally arrived.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
I
this
think
now
that's
the aliens come.
yeah, but
Exactly.
that's why like people like you come in this world because you get to this place and you know how to um, crochet, so to speak. So when people get to this higher level of humanity, the idea is to get down to the bottom and hold the ladder for the people to go up, not to try to ascend to another level. I'm like, no, we're here. We're all in the same room. It's like those escape rooms are really big right now. If one of us doesn't get out, if not all of us get out,
Mhm.
right? And like, so stop trying to just get out and work with the team. And you might have a skill, and if you're just holding that skill to yourself, you're failing the world. And if your skill is communication, communicate to people that, yeah, there is a better way, and you have to meet the person where they are, right? I can't say, okay, meet me here and I'll tell you how to get to the next level. I'm like, no, I have to go down to where they are without being hurt myself. And you look at Jesus, right? So Jesus' elevation, if you like, I don't know if you ever heard of this guy named David Hawkins. He wrote Power versus Force. So the kinetic energy, and he bases the levels of like 1 to 700. So Jesus would be at 700. Well, in order to talk to humanity, he had to come all the way down. He had to. He couldn't just stay on the mountaintop. No one would have heard him. No one would have seen him. So he literally had to come down to a level to where he can actually appropriate this talk to lift people up. Was it painful for him? Yeah, but he understood the whole idea of the universe, so he wasn't worried about the pain. Like when you go to the gym and you're lifting weights, you know you're going to grow from it. I don't worry about the pain. I actually invite it because I understand the value of it. It's like, ah, he understood the value of what he was doing. So he didn't really psychologically get hurt. He felt the physical pain. But to elevate people up, we have to go down to where they are, meet them as best you can, because we're all at different levels, and you'll meet the people you need to go down. Like obviously your clients find you. And that's really what it is as we keep elevating, using my shoulders so someone can step up is my gift, you know? And when I realized that that's when fulfillment really came into my life. I wasn't trying to get to the top anymore. Because if we don't all get to the top, what's the purpose of me getting to the top? You know? And all of a sudden, now I actually have fun at whatever level I'm at, wherever I'm at. I have my days, that's where I have somebody helping me out, you know? Even a coach has a coach, right? Someone, even a minister has someone they minister to or confess to if you're Catholic, you know?
That mentor.
Yeah, and it never
Yeah.
ends, right? The ultimate one would be God, right? But sometimes you need an in-between translator, like you're a great translator for the message to people because they might otherwise can't read that tablet because it's in hieroglyphics. Well, you're translating for them. And I think that's what we came here is translate as best we can to elevate without having to get to utopia. Because you get frustrated if like we're not there yet. I'm like, we're on our way. I don't even know what utopia looks like, but I know what it feels like. I have these moments. I know it's possible. But yeah.
love that.
Frank, I was thinking when you're saying there, and it's beautiful, again, the idea of like, if we're not helping others win, it's like if we lived our entire life and used all our gifts, but nobody knew, then did we actually exist? And part of this to me circles back to the point about whether you view the world as abundant or not. And I think for a lot of years I didn't, because then that created all the struggle to get. And I think people who don't go back down the ladder, it's because they also don't see the world as abundant. So if you're in a scarcity place, you always got to be forward looking. You always got to be hunting and gathering, and it's about you. And there was a scripture that I used to just not like, something that Jesus had said, and it was in the Beatitudes where he says, "Hey, if somebody takes your cloak, give them your tunic as well." And I'm like, heck no, I'm not doing that. Like, why would I reward some guy for stealing from me? And that was always a big issue for me. Like, I hate that scripture, if I can be really honest. But then I realized that's because God understands the abundance of the universe. Now, if somebody takes your cloak, give them this because there's just so much more out there to
Yeah.
get. It's not a problem. And that's one of the things I'm trying to step more into, right? Really see my life as abundant. Really see that, yeah, I can take a day off. Yeah, I can go do this with, one of my kids. Because I've had those moments, especially with my daughters, where they've had talks with me, like they just came from a therapy session and then they're like, Dad, I need to talk with you. And they have that conversation about, you're a great dad and this and that, but you work so much and a lot of times you weren't present. That's not a great conversation to be in as a father, right? Those are those moments. I put an F on the report card.
Yeah.
But those happen because I had a scarcity belief.
Yeah.
Got to get more, got to get more, got to take care of the family. And it's easy to justify it. Well, yeah, I work so I have to work hard so that I can put you guys in stuff. So it's an easy excuse to use to work hard.
Yeah.
Obviously, we should work hard, but you can work hard and have an abundance mindset too.
Yeah, I think when you look at people work hard that do it really well, they're not really working hard. They're just at the next level where it becomes easier. Like, a great musician, like, oh my God, look, they must be working hard. I'm like, no, they're actually in this field. So when you start to get into this thing, the field takes over. That's why, like, you see, like the Rolling Stones,
Totally.
they're still able to get on stage, and the second the song starts, it's actually they're back in their 20s because their neural pathways start to open up. It's getting on the stage and off the stage that's problematic, right? But
It's a
we,
ramp.
yeah, we learn about the field, we get into it. All of a sudden, what may seem to be hard, the hardest part is getting into that field. And once you're in the field takes over. And so it's like, okay, and there's always this transitional period, what I call the G-force part of getting into fields. Like, when planes taking off, you can feel the G-force, but shortly thereafter, you're at 30,000 feet, you don't feel anything, but yet the plane's moving at 500 miles an hour. But in order to get there, I had to feel the G-force of taking off. But now when I feel the G-force, I don't see it to be problematic. It's part and parcel of it. But if I spent my whole 5-hour flight to Hawaii in G-force, that would not be good. Like there's something wrong here. But a couple of minutes, yeah, no big deal. And I think there's always going to be this G-force breaking through, like the birth of a child, the most painful, but not too long after. I can't really speak for this personally, but the pain goes away,
You'd think.
but the pain during it was like, wow, but it was worth it. And when people understand that, I'm like, yeah, now you actually embrace that pain and transmute it into something beautiful because it will be beautiful. But if a woman is trying not to give birth and hold it in, she's going to suffer more pain. Like push, get this over with. Like, yeah, push through it. And all of a sudden, like, wow, I just had to let go. And all of a sudden, the resistance becomes my friend rather than my foe. And this is physics. This is not philosophy. Although philosophers talked about physics, because we didn't have the word quantum physics when Jesus was around. But all Jesus talked about was quantum physics. We're understanding it now. He just took light. The first, I look at the Old Testament, was classic physics, Newtonian physics, eye for an eye. and it has its value. It doesn't mean when quantum physics came in, classics disappeared, but Jesus came in and showed us grace, forgiveness. All of a sudden, his commandments are a lot different. Love thy enemy.
The quantum.
Wow, that's like, if you could learn to love thy enemy, you got this. Well, start here. I'm like, how do I do that? I'm like, well, figure it out. And you move towards that, and it's like all of a sudden life becomes brilliant. And it's like, what else is out there? Yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
There's a link between hard things and the better version of us. I mean, if you think about, I don't know how many nights you guys have ever spent in a tent over your life, but the nights everyone remembers are the miserable night when it rained and the tent was leaking. And in the moment, you were just like, oh my goodness, when will the sun come up? And you're just trying to get through the night. But now they create these fond memories because in those moments we had to dig into a better part of us to bring that out, whether it's to be strong or to persevere or the mountain climb where we wanted to quit, but then we didn't. They become they become these bright spots on the story because again, that's where we had to access this well of potential that doesn't always come out all the time. It's like, we always talk about mastery, like master something. To master something is great so that you can use it and it's going to serve others. But once you've mastered something, you better find something else to master because it's in that struggle, right? Again, back to the struggle and hard things that we find the lessons and we find the meaning in life. So always have something hard in your life.
yeah.
That at least you always need a mountain to climb. That's how I sum it
And
up.
I think when you willingly choose that, you have an upper hand. If you don't, the universe will choose it for you.
Correct.
It's so
It
true.
will. It will choose it for you.
It's
And
so
then it's
true.
like, oh my God. So
Then it comes in
constantly,
the form of cancer,
yeah,
in the form of job loss, in the
yeah,
form of this.
yeah. But when you constantly choose your discomfort, you like, why do people choose to do these things? I'm like, David Goggins, you know who he is?
Yeah, for sure.
So like, I love listening to him talk. He's always yelling, and someone asked him one time about God. He goes, yeah, I find God after 30 miles. I'm like, damn, he's got to run 30 miles before he finds God, He goes, the pain I go through. But he goes, the reason he does it is not to be in some Guinness Book of World Records or win a race. It's to find that God to the point where he gets to 31 miles and he can't feel his body. He's floating. And then he runs another 70 miles. Like, holy shit. So he uses a physical attribute of running that to get there, but that's what he's searching for. He doesn't want anything to break him. So that's very spiritual, not physical, but he's using the physical attribute to get to that spiritual place. But he chose it. And I'm like, that's brilliant. Like, that's what we're talking about. Anyone, because he'll even say, anyone listening, like, it's not about running. It's about breaking through that thing you think you can't do, but you can. You get to the point where you bust through that, and all of a sudden it just floats away. It's like, what next? You know, what race am I going to choose again? Rather than like, oh, I'm here. I'm just going to plant my seat and see what happens. I'm like, that doesn't last for long. It doesn't last. I remember hearing, Alan Watts once said, failure is an honest friend, and success is a brilliant liar. And what he means is, like you said, you're focusing on the night you were in the tent when it was raining out, which elevated you higher than the little success you might have had by doing a transaction. It's like, yeah, we want to keep digging. We don't want to be stuck on like, oh, I'm successful. Well, you are, but everything moves, peaks. Life is a wave, peak and a trough, a peak and a trough. So why are we avoiding the trough, the downturn? Like, that's where we elevate. And it's like, when I hear those, when I understand what I understand now, and I hear those quotes, those sayings, it makes sense. Doesn't mean we don't have success, but once we have it, what next? What do I do with the success? Give back. And when you give back, you give more. It's weird. Tony Robbins is what, like a billionaire now for helping people to make better choices, right? And it works. You just got to
I
keep.
love Alan Watts.
Yeah.
brother.
Us
I
too.
love his stuff. And I listen to him a lot, but I love the, when he talks about how there's no good days without bad days, and there's no music without space between the notes.
Yeah.
And that idea of there's a flow to life. And, for a lot of my life, I've been the guy like, I got to paddle upstream, right? Just keep push, push, push. And there's a difference between push, push, push and working hard, but going with the flow. And I think for a lot of years, I resisted the flow because it would have meant judgment by my tribe that I wasn't ready for. Or maybe it wouldn't have meant judgment. Maybe it would have, it was perceived judgment. So again, that goes back to the power that the tribe has on us and how it is one of the greatest limiters. But you got to come back down to you have this life right now, and so what's your soul wanting you to do, right? What's the version of you need to bring to this world? That's the focus. That's where you'll be happiest.
I thought it was really cool, James, hearing you share the story about the Beatitudes, like the portion of the Bible, the story that you hated, about what are you talking about? Give them your tunic too.
Yeah.
And watching that like full circle arc to the point where you're talking about like I get it, and I'm giving my tunic now. I just thought that was such a cool um, story that you shared because it really exemplifies what this whole experience is about. Hey, we're gonna perceive something one way, and then full 180, 360, whatever you want to say, views and how that changes that we're at different stages in our life. And for it to go from something that you once quote unquote, I hate that to now living is really beautiful.
Yeah. Embracing it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think our members listening, and the audience listening, they understand what you're getting at and what you're sharing here today, and it's really powerful. Um, if you were to share one thing with our audience, because I know we're getting at, here at the end of this, what's something you want to share with our audience in regards to something that you've gone through or that, you've had this leadership corporate culture, you've had this religious culture, you've had the spiritual type of, I love your story because there's a lot of different avenues that are going to bring people back home. And so what's one thing that you want to share with our audience?
I would share this. When I worked for years in ministry, one of the things you got to do is funerals. And it's an uncomfortable thing at first because I'd never, you always got to do your first funeral and your second. And it's just this really weird thing, at least when you're first doing it. But here's the thing, especially in the West, funerals have a sort of formula to them. And what's going to happen in the service, I think this is true for all of us, typically in the West, what's going to happen is your funeral is a whole bunch of people are going to come in, and those who know you best and family, they're going to sit the closest to where your body is. And someone's going to get up front and they're going to read your eulogy. And your eulogy is a list basically of what you did in this life. And it's going to take about 2 minutes. If you did a lot in this life, maybe 3 minutes. And the rest of the hour or 90 minutes is going to be spent with people getting up and sharing about what you meant to them, the impact you had on them, uh, what they're going to miss about you. And if that's sort of our final curtain call here, shouldn't that teach us something about what's important? And to me, the best way that we bring light to people is by honoring our own path, right? Honoring the soul and not avoiding the appointment that it's trying to have with you, with its nudges, with its feelings at times of, hey, something's not right. But it's to take that time and go, hey, what is it I'm supposed to do? Who am I supposed to be? And then what's the next small step I can take to become that? So that would be the words I would leave you with.
That's a new understanding of living from the end that I just thought about this now. Because they always tell you live from the end of this success, but if you live from the true end where you're gone and what impressions did you leave, if you live from that, everything will be great in your life. But the pain will be great as well because it you don't get through you don't get through life without
No.
having that. And
No,
most of us don't think about like what are they going to say about us when we die? That's thank you. You just hit that in my head right now. I was like, wow, I really never thought about what someone's going to say at my funeral,
Mhm.
you know? But wow, that leveled me up. Thank you for that.
I love
Right
it.
on, Frank.
Yeah.
Well,
I,
thank you guys for
Yeah.
being here.
oh, James, absolutely. It's
Yeah.
been an honor having you on the show. Can you tell the audience where they can get in touch with you? Your website, anything online. We know you have the podcast. What is it? The Born to Climb podcast. Anything you want to share with the audience would be a great time.
Well, I think if I'm going to share one thing, it would be the website that goes with the book, which is in line with what we've been talking about here. And the website is simply iwillclimb.com. Iwillclimb.com. And you can find out more about me there. Of course, there's a link there to all my corporate work, which is at a different website, but iwillclimb.com. And if you're on LinkedIn, yeah, find me there. Let me know that you saw me here on with Mike and Frank.
Yeah. Thanks, brother.
Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing
Yeah.
your gifts with
Yeah.
us.
Great being with you guys. All right. Take care. All the best. And we'll chat
Peace out.
soon.
All
Thanks,
right.
James.
All right. Bye.
Take care.